Namaste students, welcome to bio class. So in the previous session we have discussed about sewage treatment plant and we have noted down the role of microbes in treating the sewage such that the effluent present in the sewage can be treated or it can be treated in such a way that its polluting potential will be highly reduced, and after reducing the polluting potential of the water or the effluent, then only it can be discharged, it will be discharged into water bodies. So in today's class we will see what is the role of microbes in production of biogas. Okay. So you know that biogas is a mixture of gas especially rich in methane. So biogas is produced mainly by microbial activity and this biogas can be used as fuel. So biogas can be defined as a mixture of methane rich gas. Biogas can be defined as mixture of methane rich gas, mixture of methane rich gas produced during microbial activity, produced during microbial activity, and can be used as fuel, and can be used as fuel. Okay. So during microbial activity, the microbes produces various gaseous end products. Okay. So microbes produce various or different types of gaseous end products, different types of gaseous end products during its growth and metabolism. So during the growth and metabolism of microbes, different types of gaseous end products are formed. So we look into some examples where microbes produce different types of gaseous end products. Already we have noted down certain mechanism, especially when we were discussing about the role of microbes in household products as well as industrial products. We have noted down that during industrial or during large scale production of beverages, the type of microbe or the type of microbe that is used there is Saccharomyces cerevisiae. So this Saccharomyces cerevisiae, it depends on the substrate and then it produces, it mainly produces gaseous end product. It mainly produces ethanol. Along with the ethanol, a gaseous end product is formed and that gaseous end product is carbon dioxide. Similarly, we have noted down during preparation of cheese, large amount of carbon dioxide will be released by the microbes, and similarly during preparation of idli or dosa, large amount of carbon dioxide will be released. In bread making also large amount of carbon dioxide will be released. So it is a type of metabolism or type of mechanism where large amount of carbon dioxide will be released by the role of microbes. So this metabolic pathway is nothing but anaerobic respiration. In class 1st PUC and 11th we have noted down about or we have studied in detail about anaerobic respiration. During anaerobic respiration, glucose will be broken down into pyruvic acid. Pyruvic acid may undergo alcoholic fermentation or it may undergo lactic acid fermentation. So during alcoholic fermentation, the end product formed is ethanol. Along with the ethanol, there is a gaseous end product that is formed, that is carbon dioxide. So different gaseous end products are mainly formed due to microbial activity based on the substrate they utilize. So how different types of gaseous end products are formed? Based on the substrate utilized by the microbe. So when the microbe utilizes glucose as a substrate, it produces carbon dioxide as gaseous end product. Okay. The same way, there are certain anaerobic bacteria that usually depend on cellulosic material as their substrate. There are certain anaerobic bacteria that depend on cellulosic material as their substrate. So those anaerobic bacteria that depend on cellulosic material as their substrate, they mainly produce methane rich gas. Okay, they mainly produce methane rich gas. So we call such microbes which depend on cellulosic material and they produce methane as a gaseous end product as methanogens. So these bacteria are named as methanogens. So methanogens are the group of bacteria. You know that methanogens are included under archaebacteria, right? In class first PUC you have studied methanogens are the organisms that are included under archaebacteria. So there are methanogens, there are thermoacidophiles. All these belong to archaebacteria. So these methanogens are the bacteria or methanogens are the organisms that depend on cellulosic material and they release during their activity or metabolism, they mainly produce methane rich gas. So such organisms which produces methane during their metabolic activity are called as methanogens. So we'll note down some of the organisms that are included under methanogens. Methanogen is group of organisms or group of bacteria. So some of the methanogens include methanobacterium, methanospirillum, Methanobacterium, Methanospirillum are some of the examples for methanogens. Methanogens include Methanobacterium, Methanospirillum, etc. Okay. So these methanobacterium or the methanogens, they are also found in anaerobic sludge digester. You have noted when we were studying about sewage treatment plant, we have noted down or we have come across a method where the aerobic bacteria are or the flocks or activated sludge is taken into anaerobic sludge digester, where there will be large number of methanogens. They act upon or digest the components of aerobic bacteria and release a mixture of gas. Okay. So these methanogens, they are present in the anaerobic sludge digester and they play an important role in sewage treatment plant, or they have a major role in sewage treatment plant. Same way, these methanogens are naturally present in the rumen of cattle. Methanogens are naturally present in the rumen of cattle. So what do you mean by rumen of cattle? Rumen is one of the chamber of the stomach of cattle. You know that stomach of cattle has got 4 different chambers. So the first chamber is the rumen. So in the rumen of cattle there are naturally occurring methanogens. And you know that this cattle is mainly dependent on cellulosic plant material. So where is the cellulose present in the plant material? Cellulose, you know that cellulose is one of the major component for the formation of cell wall, especially in plant cells. So these cattle, they mainly feed on grass or various plant materials. So in this plant materials there will be large amount of cellulose. So when cattle feeds on this cellulosic material, large amount of cellulosic material, the methanogens that are naturally present in the rumen of a cattle, they act upon this cellulosic material. They break down the cellulose and they provide nutrition to the cattle. Okay. So what is the role of methanogens in the rumen of cattle? The rumen of cattle or the cattle mainly feeds on cellulose or cellulosic material. So this cellulosic material that is taken up by the cattle, when it reaches the rumen of the cattle, in the rumen there are methanogens present. So these methanogens break down the cellulose. Methanogens break down the cellulose and they play an important role in providing nutrition to the cattle. They provide nutrition to cattle. So in this way, methanogens play an important role mainly to break down the cellulose. Okay. So since these methanogens, they are naturally present in the rumen of cattle and it is also present in the excreta of the cattle, that is in the cow dung or in the gobar. This large amount of, there may be some amount of cellulosic material, along with that there will be presence of methanogens. So that's why we use cow dung or gobar as the raw material for biogas production. You might have observed in remote areas, you might have seen some biogas plants or biogas setups. In biogas setups, mainly they use cow dung or gobar as the raw material for the production of biogas, because methanogens are naturally present there. Okay, so now let us discuss about the biogas setup. How is the biogas setup? How is the biogas produced in these biogas plants? Let's discuss about the biogas setup and how biogas is produced in biogas plants. So biogas setup mainly has a large concrete tank. You can observe here in the diagram, there is a large concrete tank which is almost around 10 to 15 feet depth. The biogas setup has got concrete tank around 10 to 15 feet depth. So connected to this concrete tank, there are two smaller tanks known as inlet tank and outlet tank. So this is the inlet tank, and there is another small tank known as outlet tank. So to the inlet tank, bio-waste is added. To the inlet tank, bio-waste is added or bio-waste is fed into it. So generally in remote areas or in villages, they mainly use cow dung, or they mainly add cow dung, or any of the bio-waste, vegetable waste, fruit waste can be added, or food waste can be added, and it is mixed with water and a slurry is prepared. A slurry is made. So this slurry is fed into this digester through the inlet pipe. Bio-waste is added, cow dung is added, mixed with water to make a slurry. Slurry is fed into this large digester or the concrete tank through this inlet pipe. So this slurry, inside the digester, many methanogens will be present, and methanogens act upon the cellulosic material that may be present in the waste or the bio waste, and large amount of biogas is produced. So this produced biogas usually will be collected in this floating cover. So usually a floating cover is placed over this concrete tank. This is the floating cover or gas holder. It is placed above the concrete tank. So whatever biogas that is produced here, it gets collected in this floating cover or the gas holder. Okay. So as more and more biogas is collected in the gas holder raises up. If the amount of gas collected is less, the gas holder drops down. So this gas holder can move up and it can drop down. It raises up and it drops down based on the amount of biogas that is collected inside this gas holder. So if more amount of biogas is collected, the gas holder raises up. If the amount of biogas collected is less, then the gas holder drops down. Okay. So the collected biogas mainly consists of predominantly consists of methane. Along with methane, it may be having carbon dioxide, hydrogen sulfide, etc. So this mixture of gas is then sent through an outlet pipe to the nearby house. So the gas that is collected here, biogas that is collected here, it is sent to the nearby house mainly through the outlet pipe. Through the outlet pipe, it is supplied to the nearby house. So this spent slurry, the slurry that is left out after the production of biogas, we call it as spent slurry. The spent slurry is collected in the outlet tank. Spent slurry is collected in the outlet tank. So this spent slurry can be used as fertilizer. Okay, it is used as fertilizer. It can be added to various crop plants, or it can be added to fields mainly as fertilizers. Okay, so this is how the biogas plant works, and this is how the biogas setup is. So this biogas that is produced, mainly it is used for lighting as well as it is used as a fuel for cooking. The gas that is supplied to the nearby house, that may be used for lighting, or it can be used for cooking as source of fuel for cooking. So biogas is used for lighting and it is also used for cooking. So this biogas setup in India, it was mainly established by the effort of two of the institutions. They are IARI and KVIC. So these two organizations or these two institutions have put effort such that the biogas setup has been established in many parts of India, and even the government provides subsidy for setting up these biogas plants. Villages or in rural areas, people get subsidy for setting up these biogas plants. So these two organizations, that is Indian Agricultural Research Institute, Indian Agricultural Research Institute, and Khadi and Village Industries Commission. Village Industries Commission. So by the effort of Indian Agricultural Research Institution and Khadi and Village Industries Commission, in many places biogas setups have been established. Okay. So this is about the role of microbes in the production of biogas. Microbes as biocontrol agents. So what do you mean by term biocontrol? So biocontrol means, the term biocontrol mainly refers to use of certain biological methods, use of some biological methods mainly to control plant diseases and pests. So biocontrol refers to use of biological methods, to control plant diseases and pests. Plant diseases and pests is known as biocontrol. You know that nowadays in the modern day farming, particularly farmers are dependent on various types of chemical substances, and they use these chemicals as pesticides or as insecticides, or they may use it as weedicide. So modern day present agricultural practices, mainly the farmers depend on various types of chemical substances mainly to kill the pests, insects as well as weeds. So they use different types of insecticides. They are dependent on pesticides. Farmers are dependent on pesticides, and farmers also use various types of weedicides. So pesticides are chemical substances that are sprayed to kill the pests. Insecticides are those chemical substances that may kills the insects. Weedicides are those which eradicate or kills the weed. So farmers mainly use different types of insecticides, pesticides as well as weedicides, and all these pesticides, insecticides and weedicides have large number of, or they have got highly toxic chemicals. They have large amount of highly toxic chemicals. So since these toxic chemicals are sprayed to agricultural fields or to crop fields, usually these chemicals become very harmful. These chemicals show harmful effect on humans as well as animals. They have harmful effects on humans and animals. And some of these chemical substances, highly toxic chemical substances, may get assimilated to vegetables. They may get assimilated in vegetables, in fruits, or sometimes they also be assimilated to crop plants. They may get assimilated in crop plants. And these toxic chemicals, they may be added to soil. They may be added to soil, and they may also be found in the groundwater. They may be also added to groundwater, and totally they pollute the soil as well as water. They pollute soil and water. So these are the harmful effects that we see because of the toxic chemicals that are present in insecticides, pesticides and weedicides. But nowadays farmers are switching on towards organic farming. Okay. So initially or earlier days or mainly to increase the productivity of the plants, crop plants, to increase the production of crop production, mainly farmers were dependent on these toxic chemicals. But nowadays farmers slowly are switching on towards organic farming, and organic farming, particularly those who practice organic farming, those farmers that who practice organic farming, they mainly believe that there is a simple method or a natural method by which we can control the pests. No need of spraying any chemical substances or highly toxic substances. There is a natural method of controlling the pests by a method. They mainly rely on a method known as natural predation. They mainly believe that there is a method known as natural predation. So what do you mean by term predation? Predation is a type of interaction, right? It's a type of interaction where one organism feeds on the other organism. One organism utilizes the other organ, feeds the other organism for the source of nutrition. That is interaction between a predator and a prey. So this interaction is known as predation. So in agricultural fields or in the biodiversity, there is a natural predation method where one organism depends on another organism as a source of nutrition. So there are many such organisms which feeds on insects, which feeds on pests. So by this is a kind of natural predation. By this we can check the number of insects or pests. And farmers also believe that this biodiversity furthers health. Farmers believe that biodiversity furthers health. So what do you mean by this statement? Biodiversity furthers health. So it says that biodiversity promotes health. Furthers means promotes. Biodiversity promotes health. So how this biodiversity promotes health? Suppose in a landscape or in a particular area there is large biodiversity in a particular area. So what do you mean by this statement? Biodiversity furthers health. So in a landscape or in an area, if there is large variety or more variety of organisms present, then such a landscape which has got large variety of organisms or huge variety of organisms is said to be well sustained. Okay, it is said to be well sustained. So if there is variety of organisms, or species in a landscape, then such a landscape is said to be well sustained. Okay, and farmers also mainly see to that the pests are not completely eradicated in their agricultural fields or in their crop fields. So why farmers, especially the organic farmers, they believe that these pests should not be completely eradicated. So instead of that, they mainly believe that instead of completely eradicating the pests or the insects, these pests or insect has to be kept at manageable levels. So organic farmers mainly support that the pests should not be completely eradicated. Pests should not be completely eradicated. Rather, it has to be kept. The pests have to be kept at manageable levels. So why pests have to be kept at manageable levels? You know that there are many such insects which may be beneficial to us. There are many such insects which may be beneficial to us, beneficial to farmers, beneficial for the crop fields or beneficial for the agricultural fields. Suppose if the pests are completely eradicated, the beneficial insects may not get their nutrition, may not get their food. So pests has to be present in the agricultural field or in their crop field, but it has to be kept at manageable level such that the pests that are present in an area or in a landscape can be utilized by some of the beneficial insects as the source of nutrition or as food. So pests are not eradicated, they have to be kept at manageable levels. Use of biocontrol methods or use of biocontrol measures mainly helps the farmer to not to depend on these chemical substances or toxic substances. So because of using these biocontrol methods or biocontrol measures, farmers are less dependent on toxic substances, or farmers are less dependent on toxic chemicals like pesticides, insecticides or weedicides. Okay? And one of the important part of this organic farming, you know that nowadays farmers are switching on to organic farming. They try to become organic farmers such that they can practice organic farming in their field. So the farmers, mainly those who practice or those who approach to practice organic farming, they should be very familiar with the various types of life that is present in their agricultural field. They should have a proper knowledge about variety of life forms that is present in their agricultural field, and they also should have a knowledge of predators as well as prey, and they should have the knowledge of or they should have some knowledge about the life cycle of various life forms that are present in their landscape or present in their agricultural field, and they should know the feeding habits of the life forms that is present there, and also the habitat that the life, various variety of life, or the habitat, the various species of organisms they prefer. So they should have the knowledge of preference of habitat of various life forms present in their agricultural field. They should know about their feeding habit. They should have the knowledge of their life cycle. They should know about the predators as well as prey, and they should also have knowledge about variety of life forms that is present in their farm or present in their agricultural fields. Then only that landscape can be well sustained. Okay? So we will see what are those methods or biocontrol methods that can be used particularly to control the pests as well as insects. Now let us discuss about various biocontrol agents. So there are various organisms that usually control various types of pests as well as insects. So one such common example is the beetle known as ladybird beetle, which has got, you might have seen this beetle with the red and black markings. So this is known as ladybird beetle ladybird, which is commonly found. So this usually helps in eradicating, or they help to get rid of certain pests known as aphids. Aphids are those pests, usually they bore the hole in the stem of the crop plants, and then they suck the sap from the crop plants and mainly damage the crop plants. So such aphids can be controlled mainly by beetle ladybird. The same way dragonfly. You might have seen dragonflies. These dragonflies mainly help to get rid mosquitoes. Okay. The same way, there are various microbes which usually play an important role as biocontrol agents. Okay. So there is a bacteria named Bacillus thuringiensis. There is a bacteria named Bacillus thuringiensis. So this bacteria, nowadays this bacterial spores are available in sachets. Commercially it is available in sachets. Spores of this Bacillus thuringiensis available in sachets. What farmers do is they purchase these sachets, they mix the spores of these bacteria with water, and they spray it to the crop fields. So when they spray it to the crop fields, the spores will be present on the surface or mainly the surface areas of the crop fields or the crop plants. They are found, spores will be found deposited on the surface of the crop plants. So these crop plants, usually you know that butterfly caterpillars feed on the crop plants. Butterfly caterpillars mainly feed on the crop plants. They extensively feed the leaves of the crop plants. So whenever these Bacillus thuringiensis spores are sprayed on the crop plant, they are mixed with water and sprayed to crop plants. These butterfly caterpillars may feed on these spores, and when the spores enter the or reach the gut region, usually they start releasing the toxin. And once the toxin starts releasing in the gut region of this caterpillar or the larvae, usually these organisms will be killed. Okay, when the toxins will be released in the gut region of butterfly caterpillars or the larvae or caterpillar will be killed. So this is how the butterfly caterpillars can be, or their number can be checked, or they can be controlled by some of the microbes like Bacillus thuringiensis. So nowadays, from past decades, 1 or 2 decades, the scientists have observed this particular ability of Bacillus thuringiensis as biocontrol agent or as a biopesticide, and then they started to identify the gene that produces toxin. Now scientists are able to separate that gene that produces toxin, and they have introduced it into the crop plants. Okay, so by genetic engineering, a new crop or genetically modified crops have been developed, mainly by removing the gene that is responsible for production of toxins and introducing this gene into the crop plants. So such plants where the genes are modified, so such plants are known as genetically modified crop plants. So various types of genetically modified crop plants have been developed nowadays, and they have been grown. Now they are growing these genetically modified crop plants in various states, even in our country. They grow various types of genetically modified crops. For example, you might have heard about BT cotton. BT cotton. So this BT cotton is also genetically modified crop, where the gene has been taken from the Bacillus thuringiensis. Toxin producing gene has been taken from Bacillus thuringiensis. It has been introduced into the crop plants such that it can attack on the pests. The same way, there are different crop plants that has been developed by genetic engineering. It may be BT rice, BT tomato, BT potato, etc. Okay, BT corn, etc. So these are some of the genetically modified crops that has been developed such that they act or they have the ability to control the pests. Okay. So next, let us see one more example of biocontrol agents. So there is a fungus named Trichoderma. Fungus Trichoderma is usually found in the soil, especially in the root ecosystem of plants. They are mainly found in soil, in the root ecosystem of plants, and this trichoderma plays an important role. Being in the soil or near the roots of the plant, they mainly control the plant pathogens. Okay, they mainly control plant pathogens. The same way, there is a virus named baculovirus. Virus is called baculoviruses. So these baculoviruses mainly attack insects and arthropods. They mainly attack insects and arthropods. So among these baculoviruses, so majority of the baculoviruses belong to a genus named nucleopolyhedroviruses. Nucleopolyhedroviruses. So this baculoviruses belong to the genus Nucleopolyhedroviruses. These nuclear polyhedroviruses, they play an important role as biocontrol agents, because nuclear polyhedroviruses are very specific in attacking the target organisms. So they are species specific. They are species specific. So what do you mean by term species specific? They are very particular. They particularly attack the species that will harm the cropland. So they are considered to be species specific. And these baculoviruses have narrow spectrum insecticidal application. They have narrow spectrum insecticidal application. Narrow spectrum insecticidal application. So what do you mean by narrow spectrum? Usually they attack on particular or specific insects or pests. They usually attack specific insects or arthropods, and they do not harm the other organisms. So they have narrow spectrum insecticidal application. And these nuclear polyhedroviruses as a biocontrol agents, they usually do not harm any other organisms other than the target organisms. Okay, they do not harm, or they do not cause any harm to birds, mammals. They do not harm birds, mammals or other animals, crop plants and non-target organisms or non-target organisms. Instead, they usually specifically harm the target organisms. Okay, so that's why they are extensively used, because of this particular property of this particular property of nuclear polyhedroviruses, that is, they particularly acting upon specific insects or pests, specific or the target organisms, and they do not cause any harm to birds, mammals or any other organisms which are non-target organisms. They are extensively used, or they can be extensively used in overall integrated pest management. Overall integrated pest management. So IPM stands for integrated pest management. So they have a wide role in integrated pest management, because they usually harm, or they usually try to get rid of only the target organisms or the target pests, and they do not harm any other organisms or non-target organisms. So these are some of the methods of biocontrol. The role of microbes as biofertilizers. You know that because of the farmers depending on chemical pesticides, insecticides, weedicides or even chemical fertilizers, there are various problems associated with the overuse of these chemical substances. It may be overuse of chemical fertilizers or overuse of pesticides, insecticides or weedicides. Various problems, farmers have to face various problems, and it may harm the soil, it may pollute the soil. So because of this, nowadays farmers are switching on to organic farming, where they use biofertilizers. So what do you mean by biofertilizer? What are these biofertilizers? So biofertilizers are the microbes. Biofertilizer is the use of microbes or use of organisms such that they can increase or they can enrich the nutrient quality of soil. Okay, so biofertilizers are the organisms. Biofertilizers are the organisms which enrich the nutrient quality of soil. Nutrient quality of soil. So such organisms are considered as biofertilizers. So which are those organisms that play a major role as biofertilizers? So here we will discuss about some of the microbes that act as biofertilizers. So some of the microbes that act as biofertilizers may be bacteria, fungi, bacteria, fungi and cyanobacteria. Cyanobacteria. Okay. So you know that bacteria, there are certain bacteria which are known for fixing atmospheric nitrogen. We call them as nitrogen fixers. So there are many such nitrogen fixers which play an important role in fixing atmospheric nitrogen. So what do you mean by term nitrogen fixation or fixing atmospheric nitrogen? You know that even though the atmosphere has large amount of nitrogen, atmospheric nitrogen, these plants cannot utilize this atmospheric nitrogen. It has to be converted, atmospheric nitrogen has to be converted into usable form or organic form such that the plants can absorb it or through the soil and it can be assimilated in plants. Okay. So there are many such nitrogen fixers that are naturally present in soil. Among these, there are certain nitrogen fixers that are free living. Being in free living state, they can fix atmospheric nitrogen, and there are certain nitrogen fixers which, when they form association with the roots of other plants, they can fix atmospheric nitrogen. Okay? So nitrogen fixers can fix atmospheric nitrogen, or they can undergo nitrogen fixation in free living state itself, or there are certain microbes, they can fix atmospheric nitrogen or they can undergo nitrogen fixation in symbiotic association with the roots of leguminous plants. So in first year we have studied, under mineral nutrition we have studied about nitrogen fixation in detail. So there are many free living microbes which can fix atmospheric nitrogen. So some of these microbes are Azotobacter, Azospirillum. They are the nitrogen fixers in free living state. So in free living state itself they can fix atmospheric nitrogen. But there are certain bacteria being in symbiotic association with the roots of leguminous plant, they can fix atmospheric nitrogen. For example, bacteria named Rhizobium. We have studied how this rhizobium forms, or how the rhizobium is attracted towards the roots of leguminous plants, how it forms an infection thread, and through the infection thread how the rhizobium multiplies and reaches the cortical region of the roots of leguminous plants, how it undergoes or how it makes the cells, cortical cells, to undergo continuous division to form mass of cells and form a structure known as root nodule. Okay? So root nodules are formed in leguminous plants. So these root nodules, inside the root nodules, the rhizobium is able to fix atmospheric nitrogen. And we have also noted down that there is a specific pigment present there in the root nodule that is known as leg hemoglobin. So in presence of leg hemoglobin pigment and in presence of nitrogenase enzyme, the rhizobium bacteria can fix atmospheric nitrogen, and they act as nitrogen fixers. So here bacteria plays an important role in fixing atmospheric nitrogen. So other than this, there are certain fungi that are present in soil that play an important role in enriching the soil, enriching the nutrient quality of soil. Particularly among the fungus, there are certain fungus which belong to the genera or genus Glomus, They are found to form association with the roots of plants to form mycorrhiza. So they form mycorrhiza, and this mycorrhizal association mainly helps in enriching the nutrient quality of the soil. You know that mycorrhizal association is such a kind of association where the fungal filaments are found associated or on the surface, or sometimes there are certain mycorrhiza known as endomycorrhiza. So fungal elements are found in association with the roots of plants and they form mycorrhiza. So this mycorrhizal association has fungus as well as association of roots of plants. So here both the fungus is benefited as well as the plant is also benefited. So such an association is known as mutual association. So mycorrhiza is an example for mutual association. So here there is association of fungus and there is association of roots of plants. Okay. So here fungus is also benefited, plant is also benefited. So we will see what are the benefits the fungus get from the plants. Being associated with the plants, what benefits the fungus derives from the plant. Usually fungus gets shelter and it gets food in the form of sugars. Fungus gets shelter and it gets food in the form of sugars from plants, whereas plants get various benefits from fungus. So what are the benefits that is derived by the plants from the fungus? Usually this fungus, association of fungus on the surface of roots of plant increase the surface area for absorption. Okay, they increase the surface area for absorption. They increase surface area for absorption. Increase surface area for absorption of nutrients. And these fungal filaments usually absorb phosphorus from the soil. Phosphorus from the soil, and the phosphorus is passed to plants. It is passed on to plants. Okay. So fungus takes up the phosphorus and passes it to the plant. So plants get phosphorus mainly by this mycorrhizal association. Okay. In addition to this, the association of fungus on the roots of the plant mainly helps the plant to tolerate or to get the tolerance against salinity and drought. So these plants get the tolerance, or this fungus that is present on the roots of the plant mainly increases tolerance of plants to salinity and drought. Salinity is high salt concentration. Salinity and drought. And they also help, this fungus association mainly helps the plant mainly to get resistance against the plant pathogens. Plants get resistance against plant pathogens. Resistant to plant pathogens. And this association of fungus mainly help in overall growth and development of plants. Overall growth and development of plants. Growth and development of plants. So these are the benefits that are obtained by the plants from the fungus. So in this way, this nutrient quality of the soil is also improved, and even the plants get various types of benefits from the association of fungus. So next let us see what is the role of cyanobacteria as biofertilizers. Okay. So you know that cyanobacteria are mainly found, large number of cyanobacteria are found both in terrestrial as well as aquatic habitat. Okay. Cyanobacteria are found both in terrestrial and aquatic habitat. So some of the examples for cyanobacteria are Nostoc, Anabaena, Oscillatoria. These are some of the examples for cyanobacteria. Okay. So these cyanobacteria play an important role in adding up nutrients or adding up organic matter to the soil, and the cyanobacteria also help in nitrogen fixation. There are many such cyanobacteria which help in nitrogen fixation. And cyanobacteria are found mainly in paddy fields. Large number of cyanobacteria are naturally they are found in paddy fields. So here in the paddy fields they mainly add up the organic matter to the soil and increase the fertility of soil. So cyanobacteria plays an important role in fixing the atmospheric nitrogen. In addition to that, they also add organic matter to the soil and enrich the quality of the soil as well as fertility of the soil. Okay. So these are the role of microbes as biofertilizers. So we have noted down the role of bacteria, fungi as well as cyanobacteria that play an important role in enriching the nutrient quality of soil. And nowadays there are certain other plant species also that are extensively grown as biofertilizers. You might have heard about azolla. Organic farmers mainly they grow azolla nowadays in large scale such that this azolla can be used as biofertilizers. So not only these organisms, there are various other organisms which increase the fertility of soil. Here we have noted down the role of microbes as biofertilizers which enhance the fertility of soil and which add organic material or organic matter to the soil and enrich the fertility of soil. So by this we have completed this chapter, microbes in human welfare. We have studied about various benefits of microbes to mankind. Thank you.